Good morning. What I am presenting today is the analysis of a personal experiment I conducted. This is a case study at the intersection of cognitive science, art theory, and artificial intelligence. The investigation is not merely technological curiosity, but an exploration of a fundamental question. Can technology serve as both a mirror and an extension of our deepest, most enigmatic cognitive faculties, namely, the creative subconscious? The central thesis of this analysis is that generative artificial intelligence, while lacking consciousness itself, can operate as a powerful structured amplifier for the unstructured outputs of the human subconscious. This process, a form of human-machine collaboration, opens new frontiers for creative expression and technologically mediated introspection. These are the artifacts produced by the experiment, a series of songs generated from a raw input, which I will define in detail shortly. The last three songs, Relief, Esdra, and Gaith, originate from a second experiment, which will address complex ethical issues. The methodology was crucial. I acted as a non-artist professional, deliberately ceding creative control to the machine. This approach was intended to minimize interference from pre-existing artistic expertise and isolate the central question. The experiment's focal point was the generation of the conceptual seed, an uncontrolled stream of words, a deliberately unfiltered monologue captured to feed the machine. The AI was not used as a passive tool, but as an active partner. To understand the significance of generating input this way, we must look at the historical roots of collaboration between the subconscious and external tools. The historical precedent is 20th century surrealism. It was a philosophical movement dedicated to exploring the psyche and the unconscious, influenced by Sigmund Freud. André Breton defined surrealism as pure psychic automatism, a method for expressing thought free from the control of reason. Techniques like automatic writing were designed to bypass the conscious mind and allow the subconscious to express itself. Generative AI is today's most powerful tool for automatism. The technique I used to generate the seed, letting raw ideas emerge as unfiltered words dictated directly to the machine, represents an even purer form of the surrealist technique. Here, a critical difference emerges. The output of the human subconscious, the spoken monologue, is not the final artwork. It becomes the input, the conceptual seed. The final artifact is the algorithmic interpretation of that seed. This creates a creative hybrid. The human subconscious generates the conceptual seed through an unfiltered stream of consciousness. The artificial intelligence algorithmically interprets and transforms that seed into new expressive forms. The final product is a co-creation born from the interplay between human impulse and silicon collaborator. The research objective, therefore, is to understand how to design intuition, that is, how to structure human-machine collaboration for application in computational creativity. Margaret Bowden's theoretical framework helps classify this process. Bowden distinguishes three forms of creativity: combinatorial creativity, joining familiar ideas in new ways; exploratory creativity, generating new ideas by exploring possibilities within defined rules; and transformational creativity, the most radical form, which modifies or transgresses the fundamental rules defining the conceptual space itself. The experimental path translates this theory into three concrete phases. Phase 1. Seed definition. The unfiltered subconscious monologue, with its latent associations, serves as the foundational element to define initial parameters. Phase 2. Boundary construction. I created a structured procedure that delimits the conceptual space for the AI. Phase 3. Algorithmic exploration. The AI navigates the semantic territory defined by the seed, discovering novel combinations. This approach answers Ada Lovelace's historical objection that computers can only do what they are programmed to do. I did not explicitly define the final song. I designed the process and the territory. My creative act was architectural, designing a machine to generate art, fueled by specific subconscious input. One of the most interesting discoveries concerns result validation. How do you assess the quality of an output generated by the subconscious? I had to find an alternative validation criterion, embodied resonance. The challenge is intrinsic. How to objectively measure success in an operation involving the subconscious. Traditional logical metrics are inadequate. The goal is to evoke internal resonance, not to satisfy quantifiable parameters. The theoretical answer comes from embodied cognition. Our understanding is not abstract, but rooted in physical and sensory systems. When we perceive an emotion or rhythm, we don't just process information, we internally simulate the state being represented. The metric I identified is a practical example of this, an involuntary tapping of the foot in time with the music. This is not a conscious decision, but a bodily, precognitive affirmation. The body recognizes and simulates the rhythm, signaling a successful connection before the conscious mind can formulate a judgment. This mechanism can be explained as a feedback loop and self-recognition. The AI processes a seed imbued with the user's subconscious patterns and rhythms. It acts as an algorithmic mirror. The bodily reaction is an act of recognition. The nervous system identifies a structure in the output that it recognizes as its own. In this perspective, generative AI becomes a tool for somatic introspection. An individual provides unstructured internal data and observes involuntary physical reactions to the output to map their inner landscape. However, the experimental path raised complex ethical questions, especially when the input used involves human trauma. It is an ethical imperative to reconstruct the human reality at the center of this second experiment. Maryam Abu Daga was a 33-year-old Palestinian photojournalist killed on August 25, 2025. She left a testament for her son, Gaith. This text, a document of maternal love and profound trauma, became the seed for the second experiment. The experiment unintentionally enters the emerging field of grief tech. These technologies mediate mourning based on digital remains, raising issues of post-mortem privacy and including grief bots that simulate conversations with the deceased. To evaluate the experiment, we apply a formal ethical framework. First, consent and autonomy. Maryam Abu Daga did not give consent. Second, representation and trivialization. Transforming a document of trauma into an aesthetic object risks trivializing suffering. Third, authenticity of emotion. Is it genuine empathy or a response to an algorithmic artifact? Fourth, creator responsibility. I have defined this practice as generative appropriation of trauma. The process transmutes the primary document of trauma into a new aesthetic form. The main danger is decoupling the emotional weight from its original context, risking the transformation of human tragedy into mere interesting texture for the algorithm. Having clarified the risks, let us examine how to transfer the positive aspects of this experimental path to professional and corporate contexts. How can we systematize the principles of subconscious machine collaboration in business and marketing settings? We are witnessing a new creative paradigm. My experiment serves as a model for a shift in the professional's role. The emphasis shifts from direct creation, designing, writing, composing to a meta level. This meta-level includes process design, input curation, and critical output evaluation. The professional is no longer just a cognitive artisan, but becomes an architect of generative systems, an orchestra conductor guiding the AI. This requires hybrid skills that merge artistic sensibility with technological understanding. First, prompt engineering, the ability to formulate nuanced inputs. Second, creative systems architecture, the capacity to design complex workflows that go beyond a single prompt. Third, ethical curation, the critical judgment to select appropriate and responsible data seeds. Fourth, somatic evaluation, the sensitivity to recognize intuitive resonance, the metaphorical foot tap. The professional applications are concrete. In ideation and brainstorming, a team can use the stream of consciousness technique and feed the transcription to a language model to extract latent themes. In rapid prototyping, text-to-image models visualize abstract concepts instantly. In personalization at scale, content can be adapted not just demographically, but also to emotional tenor. In sound design, music can be generated based on a brand manifesto. AI acts as a subconscious sparring partner. The initial confusing stages of a creative process often represent a bottleneck in professional workflows. My experiment demonstrates a method for capturing this confusion in the seed and using AI to give it form. This drastically accelerates the transition from the intuitive phase to the structured phase. My experimental path is not isolated. It fits within a broader artistic context, exploring the connection between internal states and generative art. Precise artistic parallels exist. Artists like Sasha Stiles define themselves as co-authors of generative poems with personalized AIs. Glenn Marshall, in his project Consonance, uses complex word excerpts from Joyce as prompts, specifically investigating how the machine visually interprets unstructured human language. An even more radical evolution involves bypassing language by using direct biological data. Artists like Refik Anadol, in the celebrated project Melting Memories, transform EEG data related to memories into fluid data sculptures. Others, like Leah Chavez, create interactive installations where the audience's brainwaves influence lights and sounds in real time. This classification summarizes different methods and their sources. One can start with a spoken stream of consciousness, as in my experiment, where AI interprets personal automatism, or one can use complex cultural inputs like Joyce. Finally, one can use EEG brainwaves, enabling direct emotional mapping or memory visualization. We are witnessing the emergence of a distinct subgenre that we can call neurogenerative art or subconscious-driven art. Pioneers in this field are moving beyond descriptive text prompts, which originate from conscious thought, to use more direct and raw data streams. They seek purer inputs to create a direct connection between internal states and external algorithmic creation. The technical foundations supporting this path are fascinating. Diffusion models, which create images from noise, functionally mimic associative memory. The transformer architecture, with its attention mechanism, finds a parallel in human conceptual blending theory. We are building machines that reflect our cognitive architecture. In conclusion, this experimental journey demonstrates that AI can be an amplifier of the subconscious and a tool for self-understanding. Before closing, I want to share a personal reflection on using Maryam Abu Daga's testament. Ethically, it was the most harrowing aspect of the research. I seriously considered omitting that part from the final report. Two factors compelled me to include it. First, the undeniable emotion that the AI-generated artifact evoked in me. Second, the urgency I feel to call for clear regulations on this issue. Addressing these dilemmas publicly is crucial if we want to guide the responsible development of these technologies. Thank you.